Jack,
Brian.
I got a way for you to make the podcast some money.
Oh, excellent. How can
Yeah.
I help?
Well, audiobooks, Jack. There's a lot of money in reading audiobooks.
Yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. Sure.
And so they're auditioning audiobook readers. If you luck into an audiobook gig, you basically sit down, you read a book into a microphone, and you make a chunk of change.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would I have to read these books on the podcast?
Yes.
Hmm.
I just sent you one.
Oh, okay.
So this is an excerpt from the book. And
And so a publishing house has reached out to you for this opportunity.
a publishing house contacted me. They said, we love the podcast and we'd like Jack, because he's got kind of like the everyman voice, to read this particular chapter because he seems like he might be right for this book. This particular book is called The History of Wales.
Oh, well, okay.
And it's a history of Wales, the creature, not the place in England.
Okay.
Great Britain, to be
Right. Good.
correct. So,
Okay.
did you get it?
I just got it. I've never read this before in my life.
Good.
So let me just do a quick read and then I'll
No.
I'll
They
do it.
want the natural read. Otherwise, it sounds stilted and fake. They need you to just
What?
kind of read it as you would be if you were just reading a book.
Okay. All right, I guess that makes sense. Okay, I'm ready.
Take it away.
Okay. A History of Wales. In the late winter and early spring, blue whales typically begin to leave the Atlantic Ocean and enter the Gulf of St. Lawrence to feed on tiny crustaceans called krill. Krill are 6,000 times more abundant than Chinese people.
You lose it when you laugh, Jack. We don't get the gig.
Sorry, I forgot the rules of this. Sorry. I'll stop laughing. The largest animal known to have lived on Earth, a blue whale, can reach 100 feet in length and can weigh up to 163 tons. By way of comparison, this is equivalent to 20 African bull elephants. Or 1,263 Lena Dunhams. Despite their enormous size, blue whales are beautiful. They were not hunted for their oil-rich blubber until 1864. The reasons for this were related to the great speeds they can attain, up to 31 miles per hour, and their tendency to sink when slain. Whalers focus on the three species of euglena whales, since their bodies have a higher blubber content because they have high-fat diets like Lena Dunham. Regardless of their blubber content, they are beautiful no matter what. That's a fact. Also, because of their big, beautiful fat content, euglena whales tend to float after death. Thus, they were christened right whales, meaning they were the right whales to throw harpoons at. Things went horribly wrong for the blue whale population after faster, steam-driven whaling ships began using the newly invented harpoon cannon. The harpoon cannon was the invention of Captain James Dowell, an English whaler whose appearance seemed straight out of a pirate movie. He had an eye patch, a wooden right leg, and a zucchini for a penis. Captain Dowell blamed blue whales for the death of his daughter Elizabeth, even though all evidence pointed to an angry gay guy who lived in the apartment upstairs. With the harpoon cannon entering into service, more than 380,000 blue whales were slain between 1866 and 1978. They remain critically endangered. Their propensity to sink after death remains an inconvenience to those attempting to study its anatomy. Scientists, upon hearing that a blue whale may be on the precipice of death, will rush to the ailing whale in boats or helicopters, hoping to get a quick glance of its massive whale boobies, or harpenis, which is what sailors call whale schlong, which is Yiddish for fish dink. This is supposed to be some sort of scientific text or so, and it's really...
It's an interesting book. It was The History of Wales. I thought you'd be right for it. They thought you'd be right for it. Well, bummer.
But and it's also, by the way, can I say that some of this, the facts in this contradict. Twice it said they sink when they die, but then there's the sentence. Because their big, beautiful fat content, euglena whales tend to float after death. Like, which is it?
Well, the blue whales sink. The euglena whales float. That's why the sailors actually called them the right whales. They were called right whales.
Well, there we
That's
go.
okay. We've
Doggone.
got another chance. They sent me another script for you to read.
Some
Not a script,
questionable.
an audiobook.
Okay. There's
So,
there's some questionable material, to borrow a title from my favorite podcast, in that book.
well, it's a real book, and it's about the history of Wales.
Okay.
But
All
the
right.
one I just sent you is a romance,
Ooh.
and they thought you might have a good touch for that. It's called Nobody Knows I Love You.
Oh, okay.
And
I opened it. I've never read this before.
take her away.
Okay. Nobody knows I love you. The sounds of Tone Loc streamed through the speakers mounted on the walls, providing a mellow oasis as Holly melted her mind and body in her jacuzzi. It was just what her sore muscles and nostrils needed. Speaking of nostrils, the sandalwood vanilla candles tantalized them, allowing her peace and serenity after a challenging day at the office, dealing with her humorless boss, Mr. Wayne, and his uptight nostrils. This nightly escape was her coveted ritual that kept her sane. Moments like this allowed her to meditate and reflect. Tomorrow she had the day off, and she knew that her landscaper, Marco, 8 years her junior, was going to be coming by. In the years that he'd maintained her yard, she'd never gazed past the flowers and plants to realize that he was the man of her dreams. He had the nostrils she'd been looking for. It wasn't until one day, while working in her backyard during the searing heat, she watched him remove his white t-shirt, revealing his chiseled, dripping mocha chest and nostrils. As she sat in the jacuzzi and breathed in the sensual sandalwood aroma through her nostrils, she began to dream about what would happen tomorrow when she executed her plan of seduction. After inviting Marco inside for strawberry lemonade, she would gently brush past him, just enough to give his nostrils a taste of her perfume. She'd make small talk, all the while adjusting herself to make sure he got a good view of her nostrils. Then she'd claim that her muscles were tight and ask Marco to rub her shoulders. He would sit behind her, his nostrils flaring, his nostrils facing the back of her head, and begin to rub her shoulders with his warm Guatemalan hands. She would moan with pleasure and slowly lean back to give Marco a glimpse of the edge of his a glimpse of the edge of her nostrils. "You like these?" she would say, pointing to her nostrils. "Very much so," Marco would reply. Slowly, his hands would make their way from her shoulders to her cheeks and then gently brush her nostrils so as to subtly let her know that he was very interested and the game was on. Soon they would be nostril buddies. She would slowly turn around so that they were both nostril to nostril. They would kiss passionately, their nostrils occasionally touching and sending jolts of electricity through their bodies, as though they were cattle being electrocuted to make burgers. Marco would stand up, removing his cargo shorts and boxers. He would flare his nostrils at her. She would drop her sundress to the floor and fall back on the sofa. "Nostrilize me," she would say. What?
Weird.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever read.
It's a romance.
Okay.
It's a romance book. You know, they don't get the best writers for those things.
Clearly.
It reminds me of 50 Shades of Grey, to be honest. The writing quality was not particularly quality.
Yeah, but at least that book and that series of books was still kind of hot, right? This is
Yeah,
just a
I mean,
bunch of nostril stuff.
there does seem to be a lot of obsession with nasal stuff. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I just sent you another one.
Oh, okay.
We've got another chance for you to make some money. You just got to get through one without, without being unprofessional, as they call it in the audiobook
Okay.
business.
All right.
Just gotta
That
keep it real.
so and
Professional.
that's very much just in that industry, they call it?
Yeah.
Being unprofessional? Okay.
Yep. It's just one of those
Okay.
terms.
Okay, I've
This one,
gotten script number 3.
this book is science fiction. It's called The Big Sleep,
Ooh, okay.
and it's about space travel.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Guy traveling a
Um,
long distance in space or something.
okay, great. I've never read this. I've just opened it. Tell me when to begin.
Take it away.
Okay. Serious, collected. Here we go. This one's for the money. The Big Sleep.
Big Sleep.
Jibble's eyes opened slowly and began to focus on the screen in front of him. He was in a haze as his mind slowly began to fire up for the first time in 212 years. That's the time it took to get to this galaxy. And for that time, he'd been in stasis, a state of suspended animation, where he was kept on the very edge of death, just alive enough to be able to endure the 2-century journey. There was a hiss and a stasis. There was a hiss, and his stasis capsule slowly opened. He sat up and took in his environment. He was in the room he'd entered 212 years ago, filled with stasis capsules like his. He heard the hissing sounds of the other capsules and would soon be talking to his colleagues. The fact that they were being awakened meant that they were only 3 months' travel away from planet Kestron 7. Soon, they would begin their mission of introducing the aliens of Kestron 7 to the joys of critical race theory. He looked to his left and saw Jana. She waved. "Systematic racism," she said. "Systematic racism," he replied. He was excited. In 3 months' time, they would be setting foot on a new planet and teaching the inhabitants to view everything through the prism of race and gender identity. The aliens would certainly love them for it. Jana stepped out of her stasis capsule, slowly and unsteady. Her muscles hadn't worked in 212 years, and her brain hadn't worked since she graduated with a degree in fat studies. They was a non-binary cervix-having person. Jibble smiled at they, them. His pronouns were he, him, which made sense because he was penised. "I'm a male feminist," he proclaimed to Jana, secretly hoping to one day decolonize they's vagina.
Shoot.
Shoot. And, that was very, I could tell that was written recently, very of the moment,
Yeah.
doggone it. That would have
New author.
paid. Ah,
It had a feeling of Asimov to it.
yeah. If you took a lot of the fun out of Asimov.
Well, not Isaac.
Oh, which one?
Wally.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, Wally is. Yeah, this is very par for the course for Wally Asimov.
Yeah, Wally ran a storage place. So he wasn't the greatest.
Yeah, not much of a writer.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a
shoot,
bummer.
Brian. I'm sorry, man. You know what? I try so darn hard, and it gets me every time. I get tripped up. Something gets me every time.
Listen, I mean, you know what they say: if you throw enough stuff, eventually something sticks.
You nailed it, buddy. Great job.
So I'm hoping you stick.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. It's not confusing at all. Well, that wraps up another episode of Questionable Material with Jack and Brian.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me on our podcast.
Review us and all that, Jack.
I would not do that, but I would request that others do.
It's nice when they do. It really is nice. It's the
It
least
really
you
is
can
nice.
do.
Yeah, there's a lot of free content, man. There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.